Welcome to the Living Farms podcast, the place where we discuss biodynamic practices worldwide for you, your farm, and the planet. So welcome to the Living Farms podcast. We welcome today Jean-Michel Florin, the co-leader of the section of agriculture, about the topic Indigenous knowledge, traditional agriculture and biodynamics. Welcome, Jean-Michel.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, for me this is really exciting because we had a request from some of our listeners to make an episode about this topic. And I have the feeling that it's getting more and more awareness about traditional agriculture and indigenous agriculture and biodynamics as well. So over the last years, what is your impression on this topic?
Yes, I have a similar impression. It's at least from my side. I got more and more in contact with such questions in different regions of the world, in India, and then in South Africa, yes, and South America. And it's also a question connected to the huge issue we have just now with our connection with the earth, with all the challenges we have, pollution and so on. More and more people are feeling we need a new connection to the earth, to the soil, to the living beings, and there the indigenous knowledge can bring maybe a very interesting aspect, help to find different ways. Yeah.
And interestingly, I found that many biodynamic farmers as well have this aspect of traditional farming, be it in Europe. So, for example, in Lithuania, I talked to one of the farmers and he said, yeah, biodynamics was really like the additional thing for our traditional farming systems. So what is your perspective on this? How does traditional agriculture differ from biodynamics? Or
I would say the traditional agriculture is for a lot of people. I mean, for the people who were already in farming or where the parents were farmers, and so it's a little bit like old stuff. We want to go a new way. So tradition is on one side more or less lost or a little bit romantic. For newcomers, for people who are coming new to agriculture, they are also sometimes, they see, in the tradition there were some interesting aspects. I got 2 days ago an information about what is the best time to cut the trees to make wood. And so the old farmers in Corsica, they said, okay, it's in November, December, but it could also be in August because there you have the descending moon, for example. And it's coming from tradition. But I would say, okay, from the biodynamic point of view, we could also understand this and could open a new research. That means I think tradition is not more given. You take it and then you have to trust, but more as a hypothesis. In the past, the people were working like that, but can we understand this? And maybe the times changed, but even how can we understand this and how can we work out of this and develop this and try to make it also on a scientific way. That means really to understand and not only to make it because it was given, it was said. So this new step, I think it's important to learn from the past and to go in the future with this freedom, so to say. Yeah.
And would you say there's a difference between traditional agriculture and indigenous knowledge or agriculture?
I have the impression that in Europe we lost more or less our traditions, our indigenous knowledge, because these people were more or less destroyed. A lot of witches and so were destroyed in the 16th and 17th century. All this part of the knowledge on the fields was lost for a big part, and then it was only university in the town the new knowledge, more or less. And what I was in Peru, for example, or South Africa, and then I have the impression this indigenous knowledge is more alive, and it comes from very from the past really, but with oral by speaking and not so much writing. It's more alive, and maybe it's also nearer to the archetypes of life, of the living cycles. And in this, it's very interesting because it connects. It's similar sometimes really to the archetypes of biodynamics, because it's coming from very huge past, huge knowledge from the past. It's a little bit my picture. This knowledge was huge, was given, but very wise, and it was more and more lost in the last centuries. And then, and then I think there is a lot to discover, to rediscover, to develop together. Yeah.
So would you say that biodynamics is then a kind of a form of indigenous knowledge or traditional farming systems for Europe, or?
No, I wouldn't, because I think the people who are doing biodynamics, they come from every situation. It's not connected to a very specific place or group of people, so to say. Because this wisdom was developed in every country, every region of the world on a very different way. And that makes the huge diversity of the culture. Even if the archetypes are similar, I think. For example, one archetype, if we want to work on the earth, we have to look at the earth, at the soil, and at the sky, and connect both to develop life on earth. I mean, conventional agriculture, for example, forgot absolutely to look at the sky. Yeah, and now also to look at the soil. Then we make it in factories. We work in factories, like new industrial farming. But excuse me, I forgot your question.
Would you say that biodynamics is kind of an indigenous farming system or traditional agriculture that developed in Europe and then just spread, or?
I would more say it's a new way to connect with the past, so to say, but to connect with these archetypes, but to make a step towards the future, because we are in a new situation now. And I think it also, for a lot of indigenous people, they also feel that the situation is new. For example, the Kogis from Colombia, and so they are feeling we are in a very new situation of the world. But biodynamics was, as I understand it, given for this new step. So the situation where the earth is more or less not dying, but getting older and older, and needs the care from the human beings. So to say, in the past, all the people were, so to say, big Mother Earth took care of the people. And in my picture, it's a little bit how I understand the indigenous knowledge. We learn from the big Pachamama, from the big Earth, from Terra Madre, and we take what is given. But now I think the new step from biodynamics is to say now it's up to us. We are now like, so to say, adults, and we have to take care of the earth. And it's maybe also what we say. If we say we are in the new stage of Anthropocene, that means we are now transforming so much the earth that we are totally responsible for the earth, but on a new way. So I think there is a very interesting shift. It's very possible that a lot of indigenous people understand the situation also like that. I don't know exactly, but I have this impression. But it's a new step for me.
And what do you think are the reasons that this kind of perspective kind of was reduced during the last years, so that it diminished in the indigenous knowledge, but now is reviving back and using this biodynamic impulse to combine the two?
I mean, we had, I think, all over the world, we had a huge wave of materialism coming from Europe and North America, actually from Europe, expanding all over the world. So the reality is only what is visible. No? And now I think there is, Julia Wright says it's like that. There is a longing for more and more people to re-enchanting agriculture, to first to realize that nature is more than the visible aspect. There is, so to say, a hidden aspect, an invisible aspect, the forces, and even more. But the forces are already not visible, life forces and so on, and even the effects of the planets and so on. So these invisible aspects, and there is, I think, because of, for more and more people only doing agriculture, only working with nature out of a materialistic point of view, it doesn't give you any, doesn't give you something for the soul. It's like, it's boring, so to say. It's like working in a factory, it's like working with machines. But if you have some feelings, then you feel it's not the whole reality. If you work with animals, it's easy to feel, I think, and every good farmer feel it. Animals are much more than machines. They have a soul, they have an inner, something inside, they have a spirit, so to say. And then there is a longing to connect with this invisible part of animals, of the plants, of nature, for our soul. I think it's a very important aspect. What I see on, it's really important for a lot of young students. They are longing for this aspect. Otherwise, they wouldn't like to do some farming if it's only industry, if it's only like in a factory. Yeah.
Could you elaborate on some of the practices where you really see the difference, or where you notice a difference of what is done to include the spiritual aspects into farming?
I mean, there is one aspect is, for example, to say, if we farm, we have good, is the question of good and bad. We look at the plants and we say, it's a good plant, it's a crop, I want to grow it. So carrots, yeah? And then I have some weeds and they are bad. I want to destroy them. And it's one way of farming, new way of farming, so to say. And then we need a herbicide, or I have a pest, I need a pesticide, insecticide, or whatever. And I would say in indigenous farming and or in indigenous relationship with nature, also in biodynamic farming, we have a very different way. We don't think good and bad. We think there is a whole, and actually every being should have a place on Earth. No being is bad. It's bad if it's too much, maybe, but it's not bad at all. And then it makes a big difference. And then you say, okay, on my farm, I speak now for biodynamic agriculture, on my farm, I give a place for these weeds, for these plants. So I don't want to destroy them. I know I don't want to have too much in my carrots, but I give them a place. So the gesture and the inner feeling is very different. It's not war, it's not destroying, it's regulating, it's respecting the whole, because every being should have a place. So it's, for example, I think it's very similar to the indigenous point of view as I understand it. I'm not an expert, but what I understand and this. So not bad and good, but include and give a place. And out of this, the question is always to find the right balance. Yeah. How much here and how much here. So more a question of balance and more a question of accompanying than trying to, how do you say, accompanying the processes, yeah, so that they are healthy and healthier and healthier, instead of destroying some aspects and enhancing other aspects to have huge carrots, only carrots, and bigger and bigger and bigger, and at the end they are not good. The quality is not good anymore, but you have huge yields. So more this, always the balance, also the balance between quality and quantity, the balance between what you want to collect, but you give also something for the animals, not only for us, not the greed, always everything for us, to think, okay, 10 or I don't know, 15%. I know farmers, and they are saying, okay, I know I give 10 or 15% of my products for the animals, but it's okay if I have 85 or 90% of harvest, for example. So, yeah.
And this balance is sometimes challenging, or because you really need to know your land and you really need to connect with the different plants and animals and their needs on the farm. So would you agree if I state that there is no like similar traditional farming system, or that there is not just this one indigenous knowledge, but that it's like very different from region to region and even like place to place?
Yeah, I think it's really one very interesting point because it's actually similar in biodynamics and in indigenous knowledge. You are always connected with a specific place, and you cannot use the recipes somewhere else exactly in the same way. So you are really trying to connect with the place to, I would say, to get in connection with the spirit of the place, genius loci. As the old Romans said, there is a genius, there is a spirit in every place, and how to connect with this. I think in both cases, biodynamics and indigenous agriculture or knowledge, there is a longing to be really very strongly rooted in every place, and every place is different. It's really the opposite with the industrial farming, where you try to get everywhere the same conditions. So it's a huge opposition, this to be rooted in the place, and connected to the sky also.
And it's interesting because in the Living Farms project, we went to Limbua, which is a group of smallholder farmers. So it's about 5,000 smallholder farmers producing macadamia nuts. I will link the video in the show notes. And they found access again to the indigenous knowledge via biodynamics. So they really had the challenge of how the preparations, the biodynamic preparations, could be utilized or produced locally in Kenya, which is not so easy. So because some of the ingredients are not available there, and I mean, if you look at the original recipes, so to say, from Steiner, they were developed in Europe and in Switzerland in particular. And for them, it was really a process to look at the different plants and to understand how, for example, the oak tree could be locally sourced. So what kind of trees are similar in their character or in their being, and how they can be used for developing local preparations. But do you know also the other way around, that for example, some farmers started with their traditional farming systems and then integrated biodynamics into?
A little bit from India. I know that in India they had in the past, out of the tradition, a lot of uses from cow manure and different preparations, different treatments out of cow manure. And I think in India they try to connect or to take some old recipes and also use the biodynamic preparations. And now some people are using both aspects, or even their CPP, cow pat pit, is something like a little bit connection between a biodynamic recipe and Indian recipe and so on. So there are some first steps of bringing things together. I don't know so much, but I think there are more to come, because if we look at the principles, then we can find reuse plants which were used in the past. Or, as you said, I think biodynamics can sometimes give a new confidence to the people to use their old traditions. Because for a lot of young people, the traditions, it's the past, it's connected to, you have to trust, you have to make what the father or the mothers are saying, what the family is saying, and they don't feel free. So, but now if you have a new, something new from outside, and maybe you can learn it also in a course from outside, it's like, what all the guys are saying, it's not so crazy. Yeah? So it's interesting. So I think there is in both cases really this possibility of cross-fertilization, so to say. And also for biodynamic farmers, I think it could be very interesting to realize, okay, but this indigenous knowledge is also similar. So, okay, it's not only one thing from Europe and from Middle Europe, but it's actually something universal, because I listen from South America that they have similar, not exactly the same recipes, but similar principles. And I think it's one aspect of this learning from one another. So this possibility to learn and to give for the people who are more in the tradition the possibility to rethink their tradition on a free way. And for us now in Europe to say, okay, but it's not only a European thing, and maybe we have to be very aware to make the difference between what is European, because biodynamics developed first in Europe in a specific way, and what is universal. And it's very important to avoid any colonialism, to say there are universal principles, and maybe we can find together these principles in different traditions. So it was for me interesting. In Peru, I made an exercise about three aspects of the world and our connection, how we work with this in biodynamics, the soil, the sky, and the in-between, nature. And they said, yeah, it's very good because we have three words for this. Our Pachamama, Big Mother Earth, has three aspects, and we are working with this. And then I could explain, yeah, we are also working with this, and we have even two preparations. We spray to bring these two, to bring the soil and sky together, so to say, in the plant and. So, for example, to give one example of principles and how we go even in a very practical thing. At the end, we can spray these two preparations, and one on the soil, one more from the sky in the air, and then it helps to create this to help the plant to grow in between soil and sky, for example. And we use it on a very practical way in biodynamics.
And maybe a combining factor or combining language would be also the rhythms and the role of rhythms and cycles, because I found this is quite similar across countries, regions, and I mean throughout the whole world you have indigenous knowledge that represents certain moon cycles, solar cycles, astrological cycles. So what is your experience on this one, how this can be combined or with biodynamics?
From the rhythms and cycles, I would say there is a very interesting work from Ernst Zürcher, this Swiss scientist. He wrote some books about the tree between, I don't know if it's translated in English, the tree between visible and invisible. And he explains how if we look in the past, in the old traditions, he has really the impression, if we go in the past, the descriptions of the effects of the moon and the stars and the planets are much more precise than the new one. So it was really a huge knowledge, a huge wisdom, actually more than knowledge, wisdom, connection, wisdom. And this wisdom was more and more lost. It's really the picture he gives. And then he said, now, myself as a researcher, I want to make research and to look precisely with figures and statistics and so on, how to understand this and to present it on a new way, on a scientific way. But he gives really this picture. And his book is very, very interesting in this sense. To work with the moon cycles and also with the cycles of the planets. But you find it everywhere, all over the Earth. The people were working with the moon. Sure, he describes it on a very precise way. Yeah.
And yeah, you also mentioned this in the beginning that like it's astonishing to have the experience once you talk with representatives of indigenous knowledge or traditional agriculture forms, that they often are very interested in biodynamics, and that it's like often a way of really saying, oh, I didn't know that this is existing in Europe. So Wally Hota and I had also this experience when we visited the climate conference in Egypt last year, and talking with the representatives of indigenous agriculture. I will link them as well in the show notes. And it's so what is your perspective on how could future collaborations be enhanced between biodynamics and traditional agriculture forms? What would be needed to foster this collaboration in the future?
I think on one hand, we are more or less at the beginning. We don't know each other very good, but we are inviting, at least for our conference in some years, some representatives. We should visit also some people more and more. We began also some colleagues, so we are in connections. But I think we could really develop this, learn each other better and better, because it's really important to develop confidence, to understand each other better, and so on. And not think we are better or they are better and whatever, but we really want to know each other better, first step. And the second step, I think, or the second aspect could be really that I think we could also develop something like an alliance for I don't know how to give, which name to give, but really for farming with more than only materialistic farming. It's interesting. There was, I think, 3 years ago, this statement from 16 indigenous leaders and organizations. It's called Whitewashed Hope. And they describe in this statement that actually even the agroecology, even permaculture, even a big part of the organic movement took a lot of knowledge out of the indigenous farming, but didn't take the wisdom or the point of view, the spiritual point of view on agriculture, because it was maybe too difficult to bring it into society. So they took the recipes, how to do it, but now to understand the world. And these representatives, these leaders are in their statement, they say, but you won't solve the problems of the world if you don't change your mind, your way of looking at nature. Understanding that nature and human beings are not two different parts, but that we are part of nature, and that the earth is a living being and not a dead thing, and so on. So for me, it's really a point where we could develop a lot between the biodynamic movement and the indigenous representatives or people, really to develop this different view, or this broader view. It's not different, it's broader actually, because we also acknowledge there is a physical reality for sure, there is a mechanical reality, but there is also another reality, this living reality, this invisible reality. And how can we understand it better and say we want to make farming out of this broader view on agriculture, not of this narrow view. And I think it's really the point where we can really make a lot in the future together. That because I have to say, I'm very happy that the indigenous representatives, they did really good work. Also in the big world organizations. I have, for example, a paper, World Meeting About Nature. It was 2 years ago, and they were part of, and they really said, we engage ourselves to protect the biodiversity. And even these big organizations said, okay, the indigenous people are actually the people who are protecting the biodiversity the best, much better than every other people. That means 400 millions of people are taking care of, I don't know, more than the half of the biodiversity on Earth in their places, because they have another way, another connection with nature, respecting and not destroying and using. So I think for biodynamic farming, it could be very, can give really a very interesting help us also to better understand ourselves and develop together this broader view on agriculture. This, spiritual, or I don't know, taking the invisible part of reality into account and work with it.
So what would be the next steps in achieving this, like this collaboration and getting together? So if we have listeners, what would you suggest, what could be done?
I think on every place where it's possible, try to connect with your, if you are in a region, try to connect or to get in touch with people either from the connected to the traditions, to the indigenous knowledge, or even traditional knowledge. And on the other side, for the biodynamic people, this to connect with this. And for the people who are more connected to traditions and indigenous knowledge, please don't have come to the biodynamic people. There is a lot to share, I would say, and develop a network in every different continents, in different places in the world. South America, there is a living movement in Africa, different places. I mean, in Australia, in New Zealand, in India, also in China, actually, there is a huge tradition. There are so many. And I think the first step would be really to develop, to connect, try to understand better each other, to find the common thing, also to find the different thing, and to say, okay, it's your part, it's my part, we are different, but it's not a problem. It's a richness to be different. It's so interesting. So you are different, not a problem. But we have also common things, and the common aspect is maybe this, that we think the earth is a living being, that we think the reality is not only this materialistic aspect. So it's a huge thing, actually, because I think if you think the reality is only like a machine, you cannot really connect with your soul with it. But if you realize everything you have everywhere, the soil, the plant, the animals are all beings, then you can really connect with their interiority, with their spirit. And then it makes a big difference for the responsibility we have. And I think this we have in common. And if we can develop this and help each other and develop this aspect, because a lot of people are a little bit lost and they are longing for such aspects. Then we should also, I could imagine, we have festival, biodynamics and indigenous knowledge are meeting, and then with a big party, so to say, a big festival. It was very interesting for me in Peru. We had the meeting of the Latin American biodynamic movement, but the opening was a ritual for the Pachamama. So it was more traditional knowledge. And then we spoke about biodynamics. So it was like everybody had to make the bridge and try to find the bridge. And one interesting aspect was, what touched me so much was one young woman came and expressed, it's very important for me that I realize my tradition, it's not more something from outside. I have to say, okay, it's given, I have to trust in it, but I can understand it and I can get it inside. It's not more from outside, it's also from inside. I can rediscover it, I can work on this, and then I can feel free. If I want to connect with this tradition or not, I can make steps. It's not given like the old religion, so to say, you have to trust or not, but you are free to take it maybe even as a hypothesis and to say maybe, and I want to make my own experiences to see if it's something I can useful for me. I can make this experience. So the question of the own experience, to be free, I think it's very important for a lot of people, of young people. It's a little bit my experience.
Yeah, I just love this point of acknowledging the differences, so to say, and realizing that there are differences in biodynamics and traditional agriculture, but still connecting and empowering one another through the similarities and similar things. So that's a great aspect. with this, I would like to close this podcast and thank you again very much, Jean-Michel, for your insights and examples. And I will link the study of Julia Wright you just mentioned and some other links in the show notes for those interested. And thank you very much and welcome to the next episode.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
All the best to everybody. Good connections. Bye-bye.